And I've always played in the government sponsored systems, the leagues. I went to Baylor University. I played some soccer there. Then I came to New Orleans for grad school, which is where I became and I started getting involved in the local scene here. Um, Partnered up with a couple of different people. Started playing kind of at a higher level. I wanted to keep that competitive kind of side to me. Unfortunately, recently I had to retire due to injuries, and now I'm kind of on the administrative side of things and just trying to advance the sport.
So you're obviously with your name, from the east side of London or southern side of Liverpool. Uh, Give us a little bit of background about what it was like in Texas, playing, um, and, and learning and playing the game. That like your upbringing, being around the game as a player, as a youth.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I feel like that's had a it's been fundamental in both my upbringing and forming as a person as well as a soccer player. Brownsville is about 98% Latino or Hispanic. And so soccer is just it's part of the culture. It's part of what you do. It's a way of life. Everybody plays it, whether you're good or you're bad. Um, there's just so much talent. I mean, I can't emphasize how much talent there is there, and there's not a ton of attention paid to it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it started at a young age, and I always tell the story that I started off playing forward. Of course, every kid wants to score goals, right? And I wasn't very good, so they moved me to midfielder, and they're like, "Well, you can't bother anybody there." Um, Eventually, I wasn't good at that either, so they said, "Well, he's a little bit taller than most. Let's put him at a, let's make him a defender." Wasn't any good at that either, and so they're like, "Well, I guess let's try him a goalkeeper," and I was semi-functional there, and I've been there ever since, probably the age of 9 or 10 when I became a goalkeeper. I stand at 6'3", which is fairly uncommon for kind of Latin Americans or people of Mexican descent. And so I kind of got my hands in front of me and started saving some shots, and that's how I became a goalkeeper. Um, you know, like I mentioned, Brownsville's it's an interesting place to grow up. It's a beautiful culture. It's a border culture, but it's also American and Mexican culture at the same time. The people are lovely. The people are very passionate, and so it's a wonderful place to grow up. I think that that definitely helped me. Moving forward, there's a bit of a culture clash when I got to Baylor, which is where I played college. That school at the time was somewhere between 85 to 90% white American, a culture that I hadn't really been exposed to very much naturally coming from where I come from. So there was a kind of there was some growth there, and you know I was I was able to kind of learn the more American way of playing soccer, seeing it a little bit differently. Back then it was kind of that, physicality and speed was the name of the game in American soccer. And of course that's shifted. It's a little bit more diverse. Um, but from a goalkeeper standpoint, you're able to see the entire field. You're able to see different strategies, and that was excellent exposure there. To where I am now here in New Orleans, which there's a substantial white American population, and there's also a decent amount of people of color, not only African American, but there's a kind of quickly, rapidly growing, um, mainly Honduran population, but just kind of Latino population in general.
So I want to go back for just a sec to uh, your experience. a part of American soccer to me that is not old or exposed enough, which is the mixing of backgrounds, mixing of culture. Uh, grew up in an area that was predominantly, you know, and that's, you know, for, you know, there, it's every life. You, you leave that, you go to a school in where, you know, flipped on it. Now you're the out of the thing, and you're kind of, you know, out life, culture, relationships. You know, just the soccer piece, but in every 4 7 7 55 a year, it's a different life. It's a little bit about that transition, what that like to lead, you know, that is, you know, your roots, bringing all of you walk into a different way of life. You got a transition on the field, also got a mass transition going on off the field at the same time. What like the audience, like, what is that experience? Because I really want people to understand, because the game brings us to different things, different elements, etc. I've experienced it myself. I'd love to hear your experience in that.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. When you said that, kind of I got flipped on my head almost in a cultural sense. That culture clash was big. It's definitely the hardest thing, you know, to date. The hardest thing I've ever had to do was leave that comfort zone. You know, leave that culture, leave your family. Brownsville is not a city that exports people in any way, you know, sport or otherwise. You know, typically you grow up in Brownsville and you stay there and everything's nice, everything's comfortable, the food is delicious, right? Why would you leave? You're right on the Gulf, you're right by the beach, you're right by another country. It's fantastic. Um, you know, from right, you know, when I was finishing up high school, I had a couple of really wonderful opportunities to stay in town. I decided to leave, right, and then I get to Baylor, and it's like I mentioned, it's a predominantly white place. Not only is it a predominantly white place, but um, the incoming students that are of white American descent also have not been exposed to, you know, persons of color in any, you know, great kind of magnitude. They've also been in their own bubble. Not to say in any way, you know, discriminatory or anything, but I'm coming from my bubble, they're coming from their bubble, and so it's an interesting clash there. And I tell you, I always tell the story that when I, you know, the second night I was at Baylor, which is in a town called Waco, Texas. I was the first night I was in Waco. They have this kind of, you know, the social event, so people can meet each other. The squad, or I'm sorry, the campus quad area, where the freshmen from the male dorms and the freshmen from the female dorms, they all come together, and the men serenade the women. And there's some, you know, just typical, you know, American songs. I can't remember what songs they were, but I'm sure there was something along the lines of journey or something. And we serenade the women, then we go and introduce ourselves. And in Mexican culture, I'm sure you know, Daniel, when you introduce yourself to someone or you say hi to someone of the opposite sex, you lean in for a kiss on the cheek. Um, well, that wasn't something that the ladies I was introducing myself to were accustomed to. And so my first encounter with this incredibly nice young lady, and I'll forever remember because she was so nice to me. And I approached her and I said, "Hi, I'm Pepe," and I leaned in for a kiss, and she didn't know what to do. And and she said, "Well, I mean, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm sorry, where I come from, this is how we introduce ourselves." And so she nicely enough kind of reciprocated the kiss on the cheek. Um, but that was a defining moment. That's when I realized I'm in a totally different world, right? And that kind of, there's a parallel there, between just my personal life and soccer. Again, I was coming from a place. Soccer is life. Soccer is everybody's passion. If you're not playing it, you're watching it on TV, or you're at a family event, and because there's a big soccer game, or it's just a regular Saturday and there's a Liga MX game, which is of course what we follow there. And so, going to Baylor and, starting training, meeting some of the other guys from around there. A lot of these guys were in that much maligned, which I'm not a huge fan of either, but that's neither here nor there. They're in that pay to play system, right? They come from very wealthy backgrounds. They're all kind of structured in the same way. And they all almost know each other, right? Because they've been playing in these major tournaments, these incredibly expensive tournaments. And so, like you said before, I'm kind of a fish out of water, and there were a couple of us there, and we had to kind of adapt to that system, but also hold strong to our roots and bring some diversity to an otherwise just kind of a one color team, if you will.
No, that is so good. In there is fantastic, and I really appreciate some time to kind of walk memory lane from our audience to give some color to what that experience is like. In my own life, uh, the mix of culture within the team was important. It was that I think personally it came from the fact my introduction to the game was from it was a white family. They gone to us missionary when we were like 4 years old. So here one of my buddy family, they moved away, they back like a year and a half later, and hanging out there town for a few months, back to Brazil, and it was like, we don't want to play ball, we don't play American football, not that interested in football. All is football. What Americans, they had already adopted the culture of Brazil, like Americans soccer, and that was my the game. And but that piece really stood out to me. And as I up and then having I so I always saw that out for my own kids, and still we regularly pick up soccer, and it looks the United Nations. We have guys from Colombia, from Poland, uh, that Germany, all these different cultures experiencing, guys that come out, and I mean, like African American, actually African, and the great thing is when you sing that culture, like, for the match, after the match, sitting around all the stories and the background and all of these aspects is fantastic to to take in. It's one of the things that I love about the game and being involved in the game, and it's something that I'm passionate about in terms of the country. See us embrace our lineage as a of culture, and American soccer would be better for it if we um, systemically welcomed in all. Doesn't mean that every club has to have a integration type system. I firmly believe like that there's plenty of room for a Polish club and a club that primarily Latino, whatever. Like I'm not saying that every club has to have a certain number from each background, but when you have a system that welcomes everyone, regardless of background, you're just naturally going to experience what you come through in college, what you knew, and experiencing the unknown. I think you would different experiences, and I felt that getting building those relationships, um, and, and seeing view and all of that, and then seeing that kind of play out in community is one of the things about this game, in my view. Your story, you from Texas, you go to Baylor, then you end up in New Orleans with grad school, and then you stay, right? And you hang out. You're there. Did you playing for a while? That's something that was said you had to hang it up for injuries, but I mean, is that something you really were passionate about playing as long as you possibly could?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, sorry, I didn't let you
No,
finish
go
there,
ahead.
but I can. Yeah, I mean, it's the sport. You can only stay away for so long, whether it be playing or helping develop a club or coaching, or whatnot. I was here for a couple of years. I wanted to focus on school. I said, soccer's probably behind me, and of course that itch again, right? And I started seeking out some options. It started out with a little pickup soccer. There was a local co-ed league, um, and that's when I met Jonathan Rednauer, who's the vice president of the Gulf Coast Premier League, FC New Orleans plays in now. And he had some incredible ideas, and a lot of his ideas, resonate with a lot of the ideas that you've portrayed on your show before. And so, I don't know if you guys are the same person, but it's a little bit odd. I'm sure you guys have talked before, but yeah, I mean, he helped me scratch that itch, right? He said, okay, yeah, here's this kind of co-ed team, but I'm starting this team that's aiming to be a little bit more serious, a little bit more competitive. There's an established team in town, but they're not engaging in terms of community, and that was something that irked me. It was more, why have I never heard of this higher profile team? And and they were trying really hard, but there just wasn't, a liaison, almost a cultural liaison, which is something important when you're building a team. Is who does the team represent? Does the team represent the city that it plays in? Does it represent a subsect of the city, a specific target demographic or population? but really it should be representing the entire city, right? And so that was something that Jonathan and I always discussed, and we want to appeal to some of the players from the pay to play, which is here it's the Louisiana Fire Academy. We also want to go to the high schools and see what kind of the players who can't afford to play in pay for play, what can they offer? These are also New Orleans people. How can we bridge the gap between these two and almost make it representative of the city?
So, as you have been around New Orleans for a little while now, and you transition into this role, director of operations, FC New Orleans. What
Mm-hmm.
was that conversation like in the beginning, uh, and what the what were the dreams when you guys start having this conversation about FC New Orleans building a club and starting something there in the city that's of the city?
Absolutely, and yeah, and I realized I really answered part of your question before, and so I think I'll answer it, which will help lead up into this next question you asked. And so, I started playing at what was formerly the Louisiana Premier League for the Louisiana Fire senior team, which was made up of mainly academy players and a couple of other local players. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, that team kind of failed to take off after one season. Um, and I was traded to Matagua, who is won multiple championships within the Gulf Coast Premier League. It's one of the kind of bigger juggernauts of the league, even currently. An incredibly talented team, New Orleans based. I played for them for a couple of seasons, and I had this injury. I had a hip flexor issue that just kind of never resolved. I decided to hang up my boots, hang up my cleats. But Jonathan and I, naturally, I was in the same league, and we always kept in contact. We're good friends, actually. And I said, Jonathan, I'm retiring, but you and I know, how passionate I am about the sport. What can I do? I mean, whether it be in the league operations, what can I do? Is there a place for me there to kind of be a liaison between the Latino and the American community? Fairly well spoken. I've been in the American community for a long time. I feel like I can bridge that gap. I can help you. It's been a pipe dream of ours to develop a team that really represents the city. And he said, you know what? There's a team I'm really excited about that has starts. It has to start in kind of the local league system, but they have higher aspirations. They're a very ambitious team. They have a very ambitious, driven owner, and it's a team called FC New Orleans. And I mean, it's almost a blur. I mean, I feel like in the matter of days or weeks, he put me into contact with the owner. Um, Jonathan kind of introduced me to Omar Romero, who's the owner of FC New Orleans, and he said, I think you guys have very similar views about the sport and where it could go and what the potential is in the city, and I'd like for you guys to sit down and see what you could do, see see what if your plans are kind of in line and where you can go from there. I sat down with Omar and we talked things out. He told me his aspirations, and um, he's like, "All right, I need you on my team. I don't care in what capacity. Name your own title almost, but I need you. I feel like your experience in the league, your experience in the sport, will definitely help with where I'm trying to go with this team."
So, where Omar, yourself, where do you guys want to go? What are your aspirations? What do you dream about and talk about building? Obviously, I know this year
Mm-hmm.
playing in the Gulf Coast League along with Tallahassee, well as that are all new in the league. What 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 are you guys hoping to build as a club there in New Orleans?
Well, we've got to aim high, right? I mean, we have an NPSL team here in the New Orleans Jesters. They're currently, I don't really know why, but they're taking it off. So between us and Matagua, we're the highest level the sport here. I mean, according to the USASA, the GCPL and the NPSL are now kind of in the same tier of soccer, so that's not an issue. But the Omar and I mean, I have to say I share this ambition, and it is very ambitious. Is to bring, in the very least, to bring a USL level team here. And for that, we have the talent base, and we have the different partnerships and sponsors. We are, like I said, or like you said, we're a new team, so we're building the infrastructure, slowly but surely. But we have, we have the sponsorship, we have the player base, we have the marketing techniques. Um, so a USL team is kind of almost a 5-year plan. And again, it seems very ambitious, but we've got lawyers on staff now, lawyers on retainer. Um, an uncle of mine is the owner of a major arena soccer league team down in South Texas, and so they're kind of helping us guide and helping us try and establish this infrastructure. And so we're trying to kind of follow suit, and that's kind of the goal. And like I said, it's ambitious, but that's where we're trying to go.
So you guys are playing in the Gulf Coast Premier League this year, and you're building on the future, building towards a goal destination of moving up professional type soccer. What do you see in the Gulf South region in terms of building infrastructure and a network of clubs like what's happening in PL and in of building high level, etc. What are you doing in the surrounding regards to that?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like every team has their own strengths and weaknesses, and we're all working to kind of be stronger and be better representatives of our communities and of the league in general. My hats off to the league. Over the course of a very few years, they've grown exponentially. We're an incredibly large regional league. Now I think we're helping the Great Plains Premier League start their own situation. I think that's incredibly important. I think there's a little bit to take from each team. You look at someone like Port City, Luke Berry, great friend of mine, wonderful person. They have the infrastructure, they have an established fan base, and they have an incredible social media and web-based presence. That's something that you can take from there, extrapolate, and kind of apply to your team. You look at a team like AFC Mobile or even Tallahassee, and it's like very, very early start. And they have a fan base. They have an established fan base. They have kind of a fan section. The Causeway Rebellion in AFC Mobile is already pretty well regarded. Because of that, they have strong community partnerships and stakeholders. They have community representatives coming to their games. They were very ambitious in their preseason match. You have to be, right? You have to be if you want to grow. You have to keep challenging yourself. You have to kind of go out of your comfort zone. That's something that they have. What we have here at FC New Orleans that I'm hoping we can kind of share our knowledge with the rest of the league is that we have we've tapped into this wealth of talent in the Latino community, in a community that you know it, they work kind of lower paying jobs that you don't see a ton of them. They're in the local leagues. They're incredibly talented, and they deserve the attention that they get. I don't know if you want to get into this just yet, but our base team, kind of our good 5-6 solid starters, have all been through the professional tiers in Mexican and Central American soccer. So we have that talent. that we want to keep kind of tapping into, not only in New Orleans, but the rest of the Gulf Coast. And if we can kind of extrapolate, or we can kind of get that knowledge of the infrastructure, the presence, the community involvement, I think we can all kind of help each other in that respect.
I think that's awesome, and I think that what I'm seeing out of the league is because a lot of clubs that are ambitious, they're wanting to build. Uh, the way that U.S. soccer is, seems like every week we've got a lawsuit. The one that hit USL suing PSL, and so where this whole enchilada is going to be for years, 6 months now. But the thing that I'm encouraged by is like New Orleans, Tallahassee, Mobile, Rangers, Harrisburg, so many others are on their community, making phone, building something on a local level, and then, letting things fall where they may, and continuing to try progress, continuing to try to build something, continuing to try to what they can do, control what you can figure out the rest as it comes. And I'm encouraged by that. The quality of the league continues to increase. Quality continues to increase. I think starting to see of kind of the field operations are starting to increase. We're starting to see higher attendance. And put that perspective, the Galaxy, often called those, they're proud for this year in the U.S. Championship, the Division II. The highest crowd this year was just 800 people.
Wow.
They hosted these lights. Talking to all the Vegas Light last week, and about their experience in Los Angeles, and crowd size of the game. When you look at the that you see in the Gulf Coast League, it is at or above that level. And so to say there is, a lack of interest in college football, to me, is just completely false. I think it's that is a massive at the Gulf South as a business investor, and you were trying to find and um, created asset, a business that wouldn't necessarily fully say it's underperforming, but it's really not getting its due. Um, this region is like that business where around the country, I don't people know what's going on, and locally, the so much higher than I think even local people realize. Some of the clubs themselves realize like what possible. You know, you're able to bring in 1,000, 1,500 people playing at this level. What's going on? Imagine what could happen in a year, 2, 3 years from now as standards across the league continue to get raised. Themselves are continuing to get better at what they do. I think that because of the function of American soccer, um, and it's an in so many ways, what lining dysfunction, you can do something incredible like build the Gulf Coast, build clubs in this area, see some things happen without having to get permission to do it, right? And you guys are doing that right now in New Orleans. When you look at New Orleans as a club for the city, where are you going to get support? How are you getting into the community to build that support? How are you reaching out and making a name for yourself and telling your story to the city of New Orleans?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and I know you've spoken on a number of times about this, the lack of the promotion relegation system that we have in the U.S. And so, what can we do as a league but just grow and almost in a way create our own kind of promotion system? Just grow the league to be such a massive size to the point where we're kind of undeniable. We're a substantial league and we're representative of something better. But yeah, to answer your question, um, at FC New Orleans, we are our biggest goal in terms of community is to bridge that gap, right? To bridge the gap that you see not only in New Orleans, but you see in other places in the South is this almost kind of silent. You play over there, this other community plays over here, and we both respect each other, but we don't really get involved in each other's business. We're completely against that. We want to be inclusive of everybody. And so what are we doing? Um, not only are we going out into the community and providing kind of community events, to give you an example, after our match last week against Baton Rouge United, we were invited to do a smaller kind of shirt signing and gave away a couple of shirts at an indoor facility outside of Baton Rouge. Again, we're not even the Baton Rouge team, but we want to be the Louisiana team. We want to be a substantial name for ourselves. Now, in terms of the local community here in New Orleans, we are fortunate enough that our owner, Omar Romero, is the owner of the Latino Broadcasting Company, and so he can market, he can appeal, he knows how to get the attention of the Latino community. And whenever he markets it, both in English and in Spanish, both on social media and on the radio, all of our messages are in English and in Spanish. And through our different partnerships, through our different sponsors, we're tapping into all kinds of communities. Now, if you look at our team, yes, it is a predominantly Mexican team, but we have also worked really hard on including local talent as well. We have Eddie Cho, a very talented left back, who is from New Orleans. He played at Rogers State University in Oklahoma, came home, He's an incredible talent. We have Ibrahim Belkouche, who is of Middle Eastern descent, but he went to Tulane University, and again another New Orleans boy. And we're trying to build this team that is representative of the community, and we have these different events. We have, like I said, sponsor restaurants. We're planning on hosting a number of events there. Just expanding, trying to use all of our options, all of our resources that are at our disposal to gain support of all the different demographics in the city.
That's fantastic. When you set out to put a roster together, um, was that a big priority? Figuring out ways to bring in New Orleans guys. Obviously, you got a network of contacts and players that you were interested in, but making kind of a homegrown feel to the club, was that also kind of equally as important when you guys were filling out a roster and figuring out what you wanted to put on the field as in terms of a product?
Right. Initially it wasn't. I'll be honest with you, it wasn't a priority. When I came on, we had kind of a very Latino roster. But I mentioned it to Omar. I said, well, how do you feel about making, starting now? Why do we have to look into the future in terms of being a more diverse team? Why don't we start now? He said, Pepe, you go and do, the people in the league, talented players, people from the local system, go recruit them, include them in the team. If our coach, a very talented coach, Wilmer Peralta, who was a U17 national World Cup winner, he said if Wilmer likes them, then we'll keep them on the team. We give everybody a fair shot, and I think that's what's important. And that's something that's different from some of the other teams, is that we give everyone a fair shot. If you don't make it to tryouts, we invite you to training, at least one or two trainings for the coach to get a good feel. If you're not a good fit, you're not a good fit. That's the nature of competition. But it has now become kind of a paramount priority for us is inclusion and diversity, and I think we're slowly building up to that.
So as you guys are building, and I want to go off the field for a second with your director of operations hat. As you guys are building, what are the things that you're doing? What are you taking to get insight from clubs you're around the country? There's something that doing that maybe could learn from or for themselves. What have you guys been successful at in commercial, arrangements, etc., with your community?
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's an excellent question. There's no right way to do it, and there's no particular guide, right? Because all cities are different, all clubs are different, and all club missions are different. Um, like I mentioned, the kind of the radio ads have gone a long way. One of the Latino stations that Omar owns is the official Spanish broadcast home for the New Orleans Saints, and so he has a partnership with them. And so we're kind of working in terms of negotiating how we can appeal to the government in that way. We do share the same colors as the New Orleans Saints. We are black and gold, so that goes a long way as well. We have, we've appealed to the local leagues as well, not only the soccer leagues, but some of the other social leagues, so we can bring people in. We can let them know that this is their team at the end of the day, and though we don't necessarily have some form of a kind of a season pass just yet, or almost like a community owned sort of market fund, if you will, that is something that we've discussed in the past. there are a number of different things that we're trying to get going. A lot of things that are in the works. Particularly, we have some partners at Tulane University. We would love it if the beautiful Tulane football stadium called Yulman Stadium became our home. We're in the works, and hopefully I'm not giving too much away. Omar might get mad at me, but this is a beautiful, NCAA Division One football stadium, and we're kind of in talks with Tulane about using their stadium for our playoff games as well as potentially the GCPL championship match. Um, while we're at it, we've also spoken to some of the people at the Tulane Business School, and how can we appeal to the university as a whole? What ideas can they provide us with? So it's not only just people in the community, but also community assets, talented people off the soccer field, which is something that we've been spearheading, or that I've been spearheading, kind of as the director of operations. Is yes, we have appeal to the Latino community via the radio. How can we appeal to the local kind of American community, if you will, for lack of a better word? And that starts at the university, the major university in New Orleans, which is Tulane, and it also extends to some of the local other sports and social leagues.
That's fantastic in there too, because everybody's got to understand the context they're in, and in New Orleans is its own animal, it's its own beast, and if you don't know New Orleans, you go do maybe work in Chattanooga, maybe it worked somewhere in Atlanta. It may not go over exactly the same way. So even though it be on an institution level, hey, I heard Pepe about this, to do that, may not work where you are, and that's a good point. But to adapt and an idea, or seeing some success where, okay, how could that work for us? Could we do? How could we make our own thing work for us, community, and context? And in so doing, make it better for where we are, and going out, building those relationships, building those relationships in the community, building the contacts that you have, the resources that you have, through your own, and as well as through people within the club. It's critical for you guys in New Orleans build success as field. So I like you shared on those things, and continually amazed how much kind of conversation what they can do better. Things that I from you tonight, able to get out of your comfort zone, be intentional about being inclusive, get the community, still have core ethos and essence, are, but embracing the fabric of content at the same time, being authentic and real to both those things. In the end, it's going to pay dividends for you guys going forward. So, Mark, thanks. Pepe. Thanks for coming on the show for us for coming on the morning. Talk about the project FC New Orleans, as well as you know, background. Both those elements are pieces in soccer needs to learn more about and experience out in the community, getting out of the comfort zone, and building something and connecting with others. And they're better. You know, good luck with the and you know, look forward to having you back in the near future.
Absolutely, a pleasure.
That was Pepe Serrano. He is Director of Operations for New Orleans, and we appreciate him. I mean, on the show, look forward to seeing him come back on the show as continue to go through the season this year, and as they continue to build for the future. I really like the project and what they're building in New Orleans. Thanks to Pepe for coming on the show, and our guest this week for joining us. As always, you can watch the show live 9 a.m. Eastern on .com. Everybody have a great week. See everyone in on Monday.